Have you ever wondered why your heart pounds when you're scared, or why you get butterflies in your stomach when you're excited? Is it the feeling that causes the physical reaction, or the other way around? It's a question that has puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of emotion to uncover the secrets behind why we feel what we feel. We'll explore the major theories that try to explain this fundamental part of the human experience. So, get ready to understand your own mind like never before. Let's start our journey back in the late 19th century with one of the earliest and most counterintuitive theories, the James-Lange Theory. Proposed by psychologist William James and physiologist Carl Lange, this theory turns common sense on its head. Most of us would say we see a bear, feel fear, and then our heart starts racing. But James and Lange argued the opposite. They said we see the bear, our heart starts racing, our palms get sweaty, and we start to tremble. It is our brain's interpretation of these specific physiological responses that we label as the emotion of fear. So, according to this theory, we don't run from the bear because we are afraid. We are afraid because we run. The physical changes come first, and the emotion is simply our awareness of those changes. Think about it. When you force yourself to smile, you often start to feel a little happier. This theory suggests that our body's reactions are not just a consequence of our emotions, they are the very source of them. But not everyone was convinced. Around the 1920s, physiologists Walter Cannon and Philip Bard raised some important objections. They pointed out that many different emotions can produce very similar physiological responses. For example, your heart might race when you're angry, excited, or scared. If the physical reaction is the same, how does our brain know which emotion to feel? Also, they noted that our physical reactions are often slower than our emotional feelings. You can feel a flash of fear instantly, long before your heart rate has had a chance to spike. This led them to propose the Cannon-Bard theory. They argued that when we experience an emotion-provoking event, like seeing that bear, the information travels to a part of our brain called the thalamus. The thalamus then sends signals simultaneously to two places, the cortex, which produces the conscious experience of emotion, and the autonomic nervous system, which creates the physical response. So, according to Cannon-Bard, the feeling of fear and the racing heart happen at the same time, independently of each other. One doesn't cause the other. They are two parallel responses to the same event. The debate didn't stop there. In the 1960s, Stanley Schachter and Jerome Singer introduced a new, crucial element into the equation, cognition. They proposed the Schachter-Singer Two-Factor Theory. They agreed with James Lange that physiological arousal is a key ingredient. However, they also agreed with Cannon-Bard that this arousal is often nonspecific. So, how do we know what we're feeling? Their answer was, we look for clues in our environment. Their theory has two factors. First, we experience a state of physiological arousal. Second, we apply a cognitive label to that arousal to identify the emotion. In their famous experiment, they injected participants with adrenaline to create arousal. Some were told about the side effects while others were not. They then placed the participants in a room with an actor who was either euphoric or angry. The participants who didn't have an explanation for their racing hearts looked to the situation and the actor's behavior to label their feelings. They actually started to feel either happy or angry themselves. This theory highlights that emotion is not just a raw physical response. It's an interpretation. It's the story we tell ourselves about why our body is reacting the way it is. Building on this idea of cognitive interpretation is the Cognitive Appraisal Theory, pioneered by researchers like Richard Lazarus. This theory places even more emphasis on our thoughts. It suggests that emotion is a direct result of how we appraise or evaluate a situation in relation to our personal well-being. This appraisal happens before any physiological response or emotional experience. For example, imagine you get a low grade on a test. If you appraise this as a catastrophe that proves you're a failure, you'll likely feel deep sadness or anxiety. But if you appraise it as a learning opportunity and a sign that you need to change your study habits, you might feel motivated or determined instead. The event is the same, but your thought process, your appraisal, creates a completely different emotional outcome. This theory is powerful because it explains why two people can react so differently to the exact same situation. Our personal history, our beliefs, and our goals all shape our appraisals, and therefore, our emotions. This puts a lot of power back in our hands, suggesting we can change how we feel by changing how we think. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Why do we even have emotions in the first place? This is where the evolutionary theory of emotion comes in. Championed by Charles Darwin himself, this theory proposes that emotions are adaptations that have evolved because they helped our ancestors survive and reproduce. Fear, for instance, triggers the fight or flight response, preparing the body to deal with a threat. This was incredibly useful for escaping predators. Disgust prevents us from eating spoiled food that could make us sick. Love and attachment encourage us to form social bonds, which are crucial for raising offspring and cooperating in groups. From this perspective, emotions are not random feelings. They are highly specialized tools honed over millions of years of evolution. They are a universal, innate part of our biological heritage, providing us with rapid, automatic responses to recurring situations that were important for survival. So, where does all this leave us today? Modern psychology doesn't really pick one single winner among these theories. Instead, it takes an integrated approach, recognizing that each theory holds a piece of the puzzle. We now know that emotional processing is incredibly complex, involving a dynamic interplay between our bodies, our thoughts, and our environment. When we encounter a stimulus, our brain's sensory pathways are activated. This information travels rapidly to subcortical structures like the amygdala, which can trigger an immediate, almost reflexive, physiological and emotional reaction, kind of like the cannon-barred and evolutionary theories suggest. This is that instant pang of fear or jolt of surprise. At the same time, the information also travels to the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain. Here, a slower, more deliberate process of appraisal and interpretation takes place, much like the cognitive appraisal and Schachter-Singer theories describe. This is where we make sense of the situation, label our feelings, and decide how to respond. Our body's feedback, as the James-Lange Theory highlighted, also feeds back into this process, influencing the intensity of our emotional experience. This integrated view beautifully explains why people react so differently to the same event. Our individual differences in genetics, past experiences, and current mood all influence this complex process. Someone with a past trauma might have a hyperreactive amygdala, leading to a stronger initial fear response. Someone who is naturally optimistic may be more likely to appraise a challenge in a positive light. Our culture also teaches us display rules, which are social norms about which emotions are appropriate to show in certain situations. So, while the core emotional mechanisms might be universal, the final expression and experience of an emotion is deeply personal. It's a combination of our biology, our psychology, and our social context. Understanding these theories isn't just an academic exercise. It gives us a framework for understanding ourselves and others better. It helps us see that emotions are not just random, uncontrollable forces. They are a product of our bodies, our thoughts, and our interpretations. By learning to notice our physical sensations, challenge our automatic thoughts, and reappraise situations, we can gain more influence over our emotional lives. It's the first step toward greater emotional intelligence and well-being. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the science of emotion. I hope it's given you some new insights into your own inner world. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the human mind. Let me know in the comments which theory resonated with you the most. See you in the next video.